We just received news that Global is getting a batch of new time-limited units, including a double-cost one. So as is tradition in those scenarios, I'm doing a video on FOMO, on spending, and on gacha games in general. So we'll be talking about the state of gacha games, how to set your goals to make sure you're getting the most out of your gaming experience, how to deal with FOMO, some spending advice on my own, and just stuff in general that's related to the human playing the game rather than the game itself. So let's begin. So the gacha game industry is really going well right now. A lot of people have been spending on it, and I see more and more games with the gacha type just appearing out of nowhere. And in these types of games, if you don't know where you're going and what you want to accomplish, you can end up spending insane amounts of time or money. Those are often interchangeable. There are things you can get with money, of course, but money is mainly a factor that accelerates it. And you can spend a lot of time in the game to get similar rewards, or you can spend a ton of money to make up for time. So these are mainly interchangeable resources. When limited units are released, that's usually when players feel the most fear of missing out, because for stuff that's not time limited, you know that in the long run, you're going to get them. You don't necessarily have to pull for them immediately, whereas for time limited, of course, the name says it all, if you don't pull it now, players get the feeling that they'll never have it. Now, that's not true. Time-limited stuff always comes back, but that's a whole different issue. What's really important is the perception, not the facts. And since people fear that it's never going to come back, they are going to treat it as such. So when time-limited stuff is released, before you panic pull and then maybe spend in order to get the things, you should have a clear plan of why you're pulling this unit. When are you going to be using it, and in which type of content, which type of team? If you can't generate a general idea of when you want to use the unit, chances are it will just rest in your unit barrack and never actually see play, and then you'll be investing a lot into something that you won't really benefit from. And for this reason, I think it's really important for players to have a goal in mind when they're playing gacha games and know what brings them enjoyment and why they're playing the game altogether. So if we're talking about goals, you could just be playing the game for the story, the animations, to collect units. There is a bunch of different reasons you might want to play the game. If you're more a story and PvE events type of player, I don't think you need to spend and have all the nicest stuff. The story difficulty does not ramp up, while the unit's level and power in general does ramp up over time. Gacha games always release stronger stuff every time, because that's the main reason to get competitive players to pull for them. If the new unit is better, it's going to help them compete, and so they're going to go for it. But for story, that's not necessary. And then for PvE events, there's always varying difficulties, so you could clear most levels with outdated units. In fact, I don't necessarily pull for all units, but because my account has grown old and I have a lot of maxed out vision cards, lots of gears, most PvE events are fairly easy for me. And in the long run, every account will get to that point where they're strong enough to clear most PvE content. So, in my opinion, that is the cheapest game mode to invest in if that's what you're looking for. Then comes the arena, which for my taste is the most expensive game mode, and there are two factors that come into that. If you want to compete in arena, you need to have the bonus points, so you need to use the latest unit and vision cards that are featured there to get the maximum amount of points out of each of your wins. So just there, even if you have an outdated team that competes and can beat meta teams every time, you're not getting as much points as the meta team gets, so you're not going to compete. And then, in order to rank high in arena, you need to use reset orbs, which means you need to spend Viz at some point. So if you want to compete every week, chances are you're running out of potions, and you have to actually invest Viz into resets. So just playing this game mode costs resources, and if you're going for resets, chances are you'll be spending more than what you'll be getting out of rewards at the end of the season. Competing in arena is by far the most expensive game mode in War of the Visions. Then comes Guild Battle. It's just slightly below Arena, and the reason for that is there's no bonus points for anything or resets. You don't need to pay to participate, you have a set number of battles and you're going to fight them. Why it could be expensive is because since it's auto battles and a lot of players in there are super competitive, chances are you'll be fighting meta teams and you're fighting them in blind matchups. So you need a team that's strong and prepared for anything in order to compete. Now, you can have somebody else scout. There's a bunch of strategies in order to make sure you fight a team that's a good match for you, but in a lot of scenarios, having the latest, strongest units is going to have a lot of value, so it's still a fairly expensive game mode to be very competitive in. But a lot of guilds don't check necessarily your requirements and your units as long as you give your best, so I would just recommend you join a guild that has a playstyle that fits however investment you decide to put into the game. And then comes manual PvP. Now, this one might be controversial. Manual PvP can be extremely expensive if you want a lot of options, or very cheap if you have a very specialized team that you know how to play and that you've built properly. I know a lot of players are very competitive while being free to play or very light spenders because they have a strategy that they know, that they play very well, and they're able to outplay their opponents in most scenarios. And in manual PvP, a lot of the older units are still top tier just because of the way they interact when played in the hands of a skilled player. In the last season, we've seen Frederica be basically the king of the queen, I guess, of the season. Even though she's old, yes, she just got her EX job, but most units with their EX jobs are weaker than the most recent units. So it was a good example of how older units can be very strong. Nivlu is another one of them, where in the hands of a manual player, she has so much value that she actually beats a lot of the most recent picks. So for this reason, it's a cheaper game mode if you know where you're going and have a strategy for it. Otherwise, it can get pretty expensive. So to sum it up, every player should have a general idea of why they're playing the game and what they want to achieve out of it. And if you want to compete in the top levels of the arena every week, well, you know you're going to have to invest a lot into the game, both in time and in money. If you're a more casual player, just know that, and then don't let the stress of missing something out pull you into the kind of investment that a more competitive player will have to do, because you just don't need it for whatever enjoyment you get out of the game. Now, talking about fear of missing out, that's a big topic. The whole concept is you don't know if you'll need what is in there in the future, and you're afraid that you might, and that you might regret not getting it. But here are a couple facts that can help you with your decision making. First of all, everything ends up returning. If it's a time-limited event or a collaboration, it will eventually return, especially if it's something like what we're seeing right now, where there is no copyright issues. Everything is owned by Gumi and Square, so it will return. There's no reason not to. And if it doesn't return, it's because it's no longer relevant in the game, so you should not be afraid to miss out on it. And then nothing stays at the top. In gacha games, they are forced, like I said earlier, to release constantly stuff that is stronger than what existed previously, because that's what pulls people to pull for it and then invest into their account. So whichever unit seems overwhelmingly strong right now, and even the Black Witch Helenas and Kingmons and Yunas will eventually be mediocre units. Do you absolutely need to pull whatever is in front of you and will be OP for the next couple 2-3 weeks or 2 months? That's your call. If you want to compete in the next 2-3 months, that's part of your goal and you should go for it. But otherwise, you don't have to. Nothing is necessary. These games are in here for enjoyment, and honestly, the rewards for competing at a high level are not great. What you're getting is mainly enjoyment, and then I guess some pride or some glory out of it, but you won't have a much stronger account even if you land top 1 arena and top 1 class match all the time. It doesn't do a major difference. So if you feel like you're dealing with fear of missing out, or you're pulling out of negative feelings, like you did a couple pulls and missed out, you feel like you're wasting your resources and you wonder if you should stop, the answer is yes. Always take some time to think. If you take a day or 2 off from your pulls, and then 2 days after you still have the same desire to pull, you probably really want it. But chances are, in 2 or 3 days of waiting for pulling, your desire will actually reduce quite a bit, and you'll realize whether that you did not want it that much, or you'll realize you do want it that much, and then you should continue on your pull. Now, gacha games are one of the most expensive types of game in the industry. They are free to play if you just want to play the game, but as soon as you begin spending, what you actually get for your money is usually not much. Pulling a character like Dwayne when he was featured cost about 40 bucks US, which means in Canada where I live it was around 50. And then in some other countries it's just not even purchasable because of the change value. But in this case, it's very expensive. You could buy many complete games for this price, and all you're getting is one character. And then let's not talk about how much it costs if you start buying Viz to spend it on pulls. You're not getting a lot of pulls out of your money, and then you don't even have guaranteed value because it's random, it's some form of gambling. And here comes my first advice regarding to Gatcha game. Well, after deciding what your goal is and tailoring your spending specifically towards your goal, it's spending for guaranteed value. So if you're investing into some medals that allow you to buy a character, or you're spending your paid viz onto the packs in the shops where you know exactly what you're getting, that's one thing. And I'm generally comfortable with that because I know how much I'm spending and what for. But I really dislike, I have a thing against spending money to get viz and using this viz to pull. Like the 3-step banners for paid viz in which you have 25% chance of getting what you want. For me, that's insane. Even if I buy it at on a deal in one of the best banners, 6K paid viz is worth, say, about $65 where I live. And $65 for 25% chance of getting the unit I want doesn't feel good at all. But 2K paid viz for one of those VC banners that also give 100 medals, like when we have the spring medal shop, that's great value because I know I'm getting a bunch of vision cards that I will probably use, but just the 100 medals were worth it for me. So I knew I had guaranteed value out of my investment in real money, and that made it worth it for me. You should definitely evaluate how much fun you get depending on how much you spend. And if you're enjoying 5 minutes of your experience because all you like in your War of the Visions daily is arena matches, and you're spending 10 bucks a day in the game, you're paying really a lot of money for each of those minutes of enjoyment. But if you are enjoying, say, 10 hours a week of the game and you're spending $10 a week, well, it's pretty cheap for an hour of enjoyment, $1 a day. You should have a general idea of how much money you spend versus how many minutes of enjoyment you get out of the game to give you an idea of whether the investment is worth it or not. And then my final advice for spenders is count your spendings. It's really easy to sink money into those games endlessly, especially if you're pulling with it, and never really realize how much you spend. But if you take a look at the last 6 months or the last year and you pull all your spendings together, it's going to give you a reality check. Maybe you'll be super comfortable with what you're spending and you'll keep doing the same thing. Or maybe you'll realize you're spending more than you are comfortable with, and then you might have to rearrange your priorities a little bit. I think everybody should do that, not because it's fun to do, it's actually really not fun, but it forces you to face how much you're spending and ensure that it is a good thing for you and you do get the right amount of enjoyment for the right amount of money instead of spending more than what you benefit from. And then finally, enjoyment. Hey, this is a game. We should do it to have fun. Again, just play in line with the goals that you set for your account. If you want to be a very competitive player, then that's perfect. Try to compete and see how it goes. If you're just a casual player, stay along those lines. Don't go ahead and let fear drive your purchases. So you should know what you enjoy out of the game. Myself, I'll call myself a creative, competitive player. So I love trying to compete in arena and guild battles using outdated units and weird stuff, which means it doesn't actually cost that much, except for vision cards. I always try to get maxed out vision cards for my older units to try to give them some form of an edge. And then finally, don't pull out of fear, don't spend out of fear, but spend out of fun. So if you're going for something because you're afraid of what might happen if you don't get it, you're not doing the right decision. You should pull for a unit when you're excited for this unit and you really want to play it and you can't wait to toy around with their kit and see how you can use them. If you're pulling just because you're like, oh my god, but if I don't pull him, what's going to happen? You're not making the right decision for you and you should hold off. So with all that said, hopefully it was interesting for you guys and it leads to some nice creative thinking. I would really love to hear what you guys have to say. So reply, comment, I want to discuss on this topic because it's really important and it's not something content creators tackle often. So yeah, it could lead to some interesting discussions. If you do intend to spend into the game, a lot of content creators have Amazon affiliate links. I know I have one in the description below. If you use those, well, you can save some money on the viz that you buy and then encourage the content creator as well. So it really helps keeping the channels going. With that said, thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you've enjoyed it and have a great rest of your day.